Hello, teacher. I go on to the next chapter 4.
Chapter 4. The First Mac.
Chapter 4, the first Mac.
Other people were now managing the Lisa, so Steve needed something else to work on. He chose the Macintosh. It was a computer that Apple hoped to sell for under $1,000. This was cheap enough for smaller businesses and college students.
Other people were not managing the Lisa to Steve. They sometimes tells it to work on the chosen the machine and the work computer Apple hub on the 400 thousand. It was shipped and now to small business of the child students.
Mike Scott left Apple in 1981, and Mike Markula became CEO. Markula didn't like disagreements, so he usually let the managers at Apple do what they wanted. This was great news for Steve. He was now able to manage the work on the Macintosh exactly as he wished.
Mike Scott left Apple in the 2018 one in Makula became CEO. Makula did like decide to save usually the managing of the Apple with now they wanted they had to trade for a new seat new for Steve. He was not Apple the manager work Apple Macintosh. Exactly it was wish.
He chose the best people at Apple to work with him, and employed some of the scientists from Xerox too. They were told to have the Macintosh ready for sale in 1 year. This was impossible. Everyone knew it, except Steve. But Steve had achieved impossible things in the past, like the game that he and Woz had created for Atari in just 4 days. He believed that the impossible was possible. Some people that worked with him started to believe it too.
It chose the best people at Apple to work him the employees on the of the science from the Xerox to they were told how the machine already for the science only was year this was impossible very one in not seven but still one achieve is possible. There is the probably the government was creating the Atari in just 4 days. However, even the possible was possibilities of people who work and they started it too.
But life was difficult for everyone in Steve's team. He was often angry and often rude. If someone had a new idea, Steve usually said that it was stupid. But a couple of days later, he might suggest the same idea, believing that he had thought of it himself. Some people were brave enough to disagree with him, though, and others went quietly ahead with the plan, even if Steve had told them not to. Steve liked these people better than the people who always said yes.
But life was difficult about everyone in Steve and his team and they was angry and the after right and the someone new idea several goes on and the ones stopping work over dialect and my second the idea but even the had known the kinds of some people were brain in about the check they came though and the other one quickly and the hang when the plane even the Steve and the how team now too Steve like it there's people wearing and the power and the people how always say yes.
Steve didn't want the Macintosh to be just a computer that could do its job and make money for the company. It should also be a work of art. Everything was designed again and again. The case, the pictures and shapes on the screen, even the box that the computer was sold in. The computer had to start up quickly. It had to have a wide choice of writing styles. It had to be really easy to use. In fact, it had to be perfect.
If they want the machine to the big component and the dog calling the job one made money in in the company they shall also the work on the everything was the design again and again. They get the picture and the shape on the screen and the button the computer was sold in the computer hard to turn it out quickly and they want to hear a white choice in the breathing install and the half probably easy to use in the fact that they
Steve's team worked very hard on the Macintosh, and more time was spent on it. When the Lisa went on sale in 1983, the Macintosh was still at least a year from completion. Steve talked to reporters about the Lisa, but he also talked about Apple's future product, the Macintosh. He told them that it was a cheaper computer with amazing programs that couldn't run on the Lisa. His words killed all hope of good sales for the Lisa. This was terrible news for Apple.
If you want work in the hardware on the machine and the more time the pen and the ball of the list when design in 83 the machine was digital and last year for the compilation team working and reporting about the listen but they also talked about people photo product the machine in the hall the watch cheaper computer in the amazing program they call running the Lisa we work calculating the house of gods for the Lisa when the literally news for Apple.
Soon after this, Mike Markula decided to leave his position as CEO of Apple. Steve wanted the job one day, but he wasn't ready yet. Apple needed someone older, an expert in selling products. They chose John Scully. Scully was the CEO of the drinks company PepsiCo, and he was happy where he was. At first, he wasn't sure that he wanted to join Apple.
Soon after the Mike Coca-Cola received the label deposit on the CEO, Apple him until the job and wanted was already jet. Apple made some new art and inspired the selling product with the Joe's colleague.
He was interested in Steve, however, and in Steve's strong belief in changing the way people used computers. Steve asked him, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world?" For Scully, the answer was clear.
Scully was the CEO of their company PepsiCo, and he was happy that there he was. At first, he was sure and he had wanted to join Apple. He was interested in Steve, however, in the Steve strong belief changing to the way people use the computer. Steve asked him, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water, or do you want to change the God of the world?" For security, the answer was clear.
In 1983, Scully moved to California as Apple's CEO. For the first few months, he and Steve were good friends and worked closely together. But then the problems started.
In the
The Macintosh was
1980,
planned at first.
in the 1980, it's only moment the California Apple CEO for the Steve moment and Steve will go friends and work close together when the problem started. Uh,
As a $1,000 computer. But with all Steve's changes, the price had risen to $1,995. Now Scully said that it had to sell for $2,495 if Steve wanted any money for adverts. This was too expensive for ordinary people, and Steve was very angry. But he couldn't change Scully's mind.
Imagine was planning the first 100 computer was well changing the price and the hard rising to the 195 to Scully saying and he had to sell for two thousand 485 in the Steve wanted the money for the advert. It was too expensive for the ordinary people and Steve and very angry what called chance segment.
Apple needed the Macintosh to be a big success. Sales of the Apple II were slowing, and the Lisa had failed badly. The big technology company IBM's personal computer was now selling much faster than Apple's, and its Microsoft operating system was also used on other companies' computers. Apple's operating systems, however, were only allowed on Apple computers. Apple was in danger of becoming a forgotten part of computer history.
Apple needed the machine to be successful on the Apple II. Were solving on the list and the following lately the big technology company IBM's personal computer was not selling for the faster that people and the Microsoft operation system was also using the company computers. Apple operation system, however, are the only one on the Apple computers. Apple in the Dutch become forgotten for the computer history.
In 1984, Steve employed the famous Hollywood director Ridley Scott to make an advert for the Macintosh. In the advert, a political leader on a huge screen tells a crowd of workers in grey clothes that they all have the same wishes and the same thoughts.
In the 1984, Steve employed the famous Hollywood director Ridley Scott to make adverts of the Macintosh and the advert political leader on the house screen tells on the crowd on the working in the gray cloud on the gray and they all have the same vision and the same throne.
Then a girl runs into the room wearing a t-shirt with a picture of a Macintosh on it.
The girls run into the room wearing a t-shirt with a picture of the Macintosh on it.
She throws something at the screen and breaks the glass. The message is clear. The Macintosh will free creative people from the narrow choice of an IBM-style computer.
She shows something on the screen and breaks the glass. The message is clear. The Macintosh will free create people from the narrow choice of the even style computers.
The advert was 1 minute long. Apple paid to show it on TV once only because many people at the company didn't like it. But once was enough. The public loved it. It was like no advert that they had seen before. It was shown again and again on the evening news around the country.
It adverse was 1 minute long. People paying to the show and the in on TV only because many people in the computers did like in but on fun enough. The political was in the like no advertise that the I see before the web show again and again and when the news around the country.
2 days after the TV advert was shown, there was a big meeting for shareholders and reporters. Steve was always good at public speaking. He could keep the attention of a crowd for hours with his interesting stories and funny jokes. Now he told everyone about the Macintosh and showed them the great things that it could do. Then the Macintosh itself started speaking. It told a joke about IBM before introducing the man who has been like a father to me, Steve Jobs. The crowd went wild. It was the cleverest computer that they had ever seen. Soon computer shops were full of people wanting to buy the new computer. The first 3-month sales of the Macintosh, or Mac, were fantastic. Not all the people who bought the Mac were happy, however.
2 days after the TV advert was show, which was a big meeting, the shadow for on reports, there was always good public speaking. The call to speak attention of the crowd in the hall with the interesting stories and funny gadgets. Now they told everyone about the Macintosh. It was several the great teen adult called to the machine into started speaking in the town. A joke about EVM. IBM before introduction to the mind the world like a father and Steve Jobs because they were in anyone close to complete however some computers job were for the people wanting to develop with the new computer for first and months on the Macintosh and Mac were fantastic.
If you bought an IBM PC, you had a wide choice of software, but you could use almost none of it on a Mac. Customers were also unhappy that the screen was small and not in colour. The Mac didn't have enough power, so it was very slow. Too often it stopped working completely.
And not all the people went down on the Mac very happy with before you go down in VMPC you have with just software, but you could use Ammonite in the on Mac. Customer were also unhappy that the screen was small and not in color. The Mac did have enough power, so not very low. To after is shop working complete, completely.
By spring 1985, Apple were only selling a tenth of the Macs that they had hoped to sell. Woz had left to start a new company, and many of the best people from the Macintosh team were leaving too. Apple's director
The spring 1985, Apple were only sending invitation on the Mac on the web hoping to start was left to start a company on the many best problem from the touching thing were living too.
felt that their problems were the fault of Steve Jobs. He was a bad manager of people. He had stopped the Lisa from being successful. Now even the Macintosh was failing.
Apple director felt the right problem were the fault Steve Jobs. He was bad manager of people we had stopping the Lisa from the being successful, and now the Macintosh was failing. Massive.
Scully decided to take Steve off the Macintosh team. Instead, he told him to work on ideas for new products. Steve was angry that people didn't like his management style. He secretly made a plan with some friends to throw Scully out of Apple and become CEO himself. But Scully found out. He told the Apple directors that he couldn't work with Steve anymore. Either he or Steve had to go. The directors chose to keep Scully, and Steve lost his job as a director of the company that he had started.
Secondly, decided to take studio on my Macintosh team stand to the hub to the warn the idea for the new products that was angry that the people did like in managing style. Secretly made a plan with some friends the tell security on the Apple and become CEO hands off for the security from the house on the Apple editor when the call word this Steve anymore. There's host Steven had to go with the director close to keep Scully and Steve lost his job as director on the company that he started. Thank you, teacher, for listening my speaking on the listen the book. Thank you so much. Thank you and bye. And the next chapter.